Hello, my name's James Piecowye, and welcome to Catching Up. Catching Up is a podcast where I literally catch up with interesting people that I've not spoken with in a while. We talk about their careers, current events, issues, and even what motivates them. We have a good old chat, we catch up. In this episode, I catch up with Maha AlKhalawi, a creative innovator, a multidisciplinarian who loves to look at the big picture and explore the intersections of design, business, social innovation, and even more. Welcome to our conversation.
Do you remember when we first met?
Creative Mornings.
2018.
Yeah, it was a way back.
And
right?
Rhonda says, I got this person, you're going to love meeting her. and all she says, creative, Saudi, she's going to be great. And I'm going, uh-huh. And I'm going, oh.
It sounds like a headache.
I'm just going, well, it's all the stereotypes come in, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just going, okay, well, let's see. And then you rock up and it's like a whole different story.
You're like, wait, she's not Saudi.
Well, that's the first thing I'm expecting, full abaya, the full deal. And that didn't happen. And then the stories start. And then I'm going, okay. This is getting interesting.
Yeah.
2018, December.
Yeah, I was in the nest.
And time flies. I mean, so in that time, you've been coming to a lot of creative mornings, but
I love them.
I've been following all the stuff you've been doing, and you've really done, your path has really kind of changed. And when you kind of look at it, it's sort of all doing the same stuff, but creativity, innovation, change management.
Yeah.
When someone talks to you and you start talking to them, and once you get past all of the, okay, this and that, how do you describe what you do?
I always joke and I say, yeah, it's that stuff that no one understands, right?
Yeah. But really?
Essentially, it's problem solving.
Okay.
Right? At the core of it, it's creative problem solving. There's a lot of connecting the dots. So there's a lot of getting to know who's who in the organization, understanding what they're really passionate about and what they're doing, and kind of getting them to join as a community. So part of it is, informal community creation. And that's a lot of what I'm doing right now at work as well. Yesterday we had like a internal sustainability morning, because now my new hat is sustainability. Did I tell you that?
Yeah. How did that change come up? Because you were at EY.
Mm-hmm.
Before that you were somewhere else.
Yeah, before that I was a freelancer.
Right. So you're freelancing.
Yeah, and I had worked in a few agencies in Saudi, but that was purely brand strategy and creative work.
And then
100%.
Then you end up at EY, which at the core they're accountants, but they're also change management and other things.
Yeah, but the team that I joined was actually a service design and a creative team, because they had made an acquisition called EY Saran, and I joined under that team. So I was still technically a creative under the company, but then I kind of realized that when you have a huge company like that acquiring these smaller creative firms, they don't always have a plan on how to help them grow, So it was kind of a glass ceiling. So I started learning other things in order to create my own space in the company. And that's when I joined the innovation team. So I moved from the service design team onto innovation. And that's where more of the strategy work started coming in, because then we had to kind of understand how the company's put together. It was good because I got a bird's eye view, really, of how the company was put together globally. And
what did you learn?
Well, I learned that I had been working in one team for 1.5 years without really understanding how the company worked.
I mean, it's crazy though.
We were so siloed. It was, we were in our little tunnel, digging our little trenches, working on our projects, focused on the clients, but not really knowing how the operations happened overall.
I think so many companies are like that. I mean, it's amazing. We talk, but I'm not sure we're really doing.
Well, look, in all fairness, there's always comms going out helping people try to understand the overall vision and strategy and purpose of the company. Either people are too busy, too stressed out, uninterested to join these calls and understand. And I think also the content is so dry because I've joined some of them, And I just zone out. It's really hard to focus because there isn't any passion attached to it when you're explaining it, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times when these videos are showing, when you have these, I don't know, global calls talking about, oh, our new strategy is this. I don't know, at least for me, because essentially deep down I'm still a creative, it's really easy for me to tune it out and start playing with my phone and doing something else. And in full honesty.
Let's walk over here.
Yeah, sure. So, but back to how my sustainability hat got added on. It's really simple, actually. I proposed it.
You proposed it.
Yeah. So when I was going through the interviews for my new job now, my current one, I basically was talking to the CEO, and I was like, I asked them to show me like how the company was put together, which is something I've never done before
And what was
at a
the
job
reaction?
interview.
Because here you are, someone who's coming in, they're looking at you, they're looking at the hat, they're seeing this creative, and you're starting to ask questions.
Yeah, I mean, he was happy. He literally just jumped up, took a whiteboard with a marker and started drawing out like where everyone kind of lies and how the company is put together, which was really useful. And I was just like, well, I don't see like you have anyone holding sustainability here in MENA. And he was just like, well, we believe it's kind of infused in everything. I was like, yeah, but you need someone to kind of be the champion of that, right?
Yeah.
And I don't believe innovation really exists anymore. There's no point of innovating without having a sustainability framework in place or mindset. It's just like useless because that means you're missing the point.
It's a buzzword.
Yeah. And just like if you're coming up with new ideas, they need to be sustainable. You need to keep in mind whether it's people, the planet, or prosperity. You have to keep all those metrics in mind. So then why not merge them under one, right? And that's essentially why I proposed that. And he was happy to like give me 2 jobs in one instead of paying 2 people to do it, right?
Sure, it's a good bonus.
Yeah, right?
You're asking questions. He's going, I don't have to hire someone else. And but was he really, did he really engage with it? Did he really believe it? Or was it just like, hey, you know what, I'm going to placate you a little bit here and we'll see?
I think he's more like, if you can pull it off, great.
Okay.
And
if you don't, then we haven't lost anything.
If you don't, we have a huge framework globally in place. There's just not really much. Basically, what they kind of bring it in from the outside, but it's not homegrown, right?
Okay.
But I wanted to do more things that were locally driven, more homegrown. And, but yeah, I think initially, I don't know what his expectations were when he met me, but our first hour and a half did not involve any conversations about work.
That's excellent. But that's the way it should be, right? Because isn't that the biggest issue that people talk about with their work-life environment is you get to work and it's all work. And we become these work people without any reference outside of the walls of our job.
Yeah, and I think also if you're interviewing someone, it's important to understand who they are as a person.
Yeah.
What are their, and in hindsight, when I think about his questions, it was more around understanding if I had critical thinking, right? What were my opinions on certain current, political topics around the world or ongoing topics? Do I read the news? Obviously not as clearly as saying that, but his questions were prompting in that direction to understand just what kind of a human being am I? Am I just focused on the, let's say, the theoretical part of work without really understanding the application of it in real life or the implications even in real life? Or am I more well-rounded? And I'm not tooting my own horn over here, but I think he was pleasantly surprised. But yeah, it's interesting because for me that's a learning experience, because if I'm ever in his position and I'm hiring people, I want to make it a point to first understand who they are as people before I understand whether they know their work or not, because that's really how you interact with your team on a daily basis.
So where's that led you to now?
So right now I'm hitting innovation, sustainability, and impact at Wipro across MENA. We're focused right now here in Dubai, but I think it's only been 2 months, so we're going to start expanding our activities.
Let's jump back for a second.
Yeah.
when we talk about sustainability,
Yeah.
the way we talk, and you mentioned this, that we talk about sustainability in an unsustainable manner. We talk about sustainability typically as just with a magnifying glass, jump in, we're going to do this, but we don't actually talk about the sustainability of our sustainability actions. You're now coming in with that mindset. Do you see challenges?
Of course. But look, in all honesty, I'm nowhere near an expert. I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And I picked this hat for myself, even though the experience that I have is extremely limited, because I want to force myself outside my comfort zone and learn. But
which is something you always do, from in your design work, in your book writing work, which we'll talk about, your children's book that you illustrated and wrote. We'll talk about that. Sharjah Book Fair, you're there. I mean, this is you. This is Maha. Maha.
I never thought of it that way. Yeah, I'm always like, why am I doing this? But yeah, I mean, but also again, I think at some level, I can see not just where the trend is going, but really where the change is going.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, like,
do people want it? Like when you sit down with your colleagues, they want it. They're tired of the same old path. Let's do.
Yeah, and I think more and more, and when this maybe goes back to one of the reasons why a lot of companies are struggling with retention, more and more people care about aligning themselves with a sense of purpose. It's really hard to go to the office every day, work on spreadsheets, if you're not thinking, okay, I know that this in the end is going to go someplace great. There needs to be at least a higher purpose and understanding. For some people, their higher purpose is, I'm going to put food on the table for my kids. Fair enough. Honestly, that's a great higher purpose. But for others, that's not enough, and they need to feel like they're giving something back to the world or to the environment. And I think that's where having a really good sustainability agenda falls in. It's not just good for the planet. It's good for our psyche as people, especially with the way we have started forming lives today.
I love this point that you've touched on, because I'm talking with colleagues yesterday, and as we talk about sustainability and organizations and where we fit in, we had the exact same conversation that where I am, for instance, we were talking about our own careers, where I am in my careers were way different where my colleague was. And because of that, her expectations and her needs from a sustainable workplace were very different than mine. And when you start putting those together, it makes magic.
Well, the whole part of sustainability is also diversity and inclusion. And, how do you apply that? Is that diversity just in ethnic backgrounds, or is it diversity in needs, diversity in ways of work?
And I think we take that word diversity and we look at a very narrow band of it.
Yes. And even in education itself, like if I were to say just the way kids learn.
Yeah.
Everybody learns differently, and some people are more audio related and some are more visual and some need physical activity. And, I feel like, especially with younger kids, I think there's a movement, hopefully, maybe it's fringe right now, hopefully one day it'll be mainstream, around accommodating different ways of learning into a curriculum. But we've gone way off topic at this point.
No, not at all.
Okay, great.
How does your extracurricular activity, and I'm not so sure that's doing it justice. And I think
hustle.
I don't think it's the right word, because I don't think it's an extracurricular activity. But you're a children's book writer and illustrator as well. Like, you've written a children's book, and this is a piece of your passion. How does that fit into how you define yourself and how people see you?
People are multifaceted, right?
Yeah.
And
again, we don't want to say that, right? It's like, well, I can't be multifaceted. You are the writer, you are the designer, you are the innovator.
I think at this point everyone is multifaceted. Renaissance men and women, we used to think they're only in the Renaissance, but in real life, we're still all Renaissance people. And everybody there's a really good book called Culture and Identity.
Okay.
And it talks about this from how political rhetoric uses putting people in boxes with one label as a way to divide people, right? But it applies to everything, really. If you're conscious of looking at people and thinking, this person has so much beyond what I can see
Yeah.
that I will maybe never know about, right? But so for my books, it was really like, I call them my pandemic babies. It was a passion project.
Okay.
People had real kids. I had 3 books, triplets. And I think it was something in me that I always wanted to do. I don't think it was ever for the case of having a career as an author. It was more just like, I love the whimsical nature of children's books.
Okay.
And especially the ones that pass on something really meaningful in them. And thankfully there's a rise in that when it comes to Arabic books. But here's the thing, my books are all in Arabic. And the reason why I did that was because even though there's a rise in Arabic children's book content, it's still very limited compared to what you see in other languages. And Arabic speakers are a huge chunk of the world. It's not a inconsiderable number. So this disparity, I find a bit sad, but also, again, when you look around, kids are having a much harder time than my generation did in not only speaking Arabic, but also learning Arabic when it comes to, Fusha, which is classical Arabic, and whatever dialect their family will speak. Right?
Are your children's books written in a Saudi dialect or?
No, they're classical.
Okay.
I believe that classical should be the language of reading and writing. I'm a firm believer in that. It might be there's a lot of people who are trying to push for breaking it down into different dialects, even in writing. But there's a whole grammatical structure to Arabic that is very mathematical. It makes sense, actually. Whereas if you start applying it to dialects, the grammar kind of breaks down. There isn't really, sometimes even between friends and family, there isn't a right or wrong way to say something. So it just gets a lot more grayer the lines are blurry. If somebody wants to step up and kind of create grammatical structures for their dialect, fair enough. But at the same time, I think it'll really disconnect us as a people. And I think the Arabic language is probably the only thing right now that really keeps the Arabs more united, not more united, just as an identity.
It's an identity. Connected. It's connected.
Yeah, it's an identity thing.
We're the
right?
same. We're all what we're.
Yeah. If everyone spoke French, right? If you have the ex-French colonies, they all still speak French. So there is an identity where they still identify with France. The same happens for, Canada, Australia, and the UK, and other Commonwealth countries. So language is a huge unifier when you can actually communicate with each other. So that's one of the reasons why I kept it in Fusha. One of the discussions I had actually with another children's book author and publisher was kind of why our kids, I don't remember having the struggle with Fusha the way children are right now. And the realization that she had reached was that we were exposed to classical Arabic from a young age because we used to watch a lot of Arabic cartoons, Japanese anime that were dubbed into classical Arabic, right?
Right.
But it was really good.
At least they were doing it.
Yeah. And these things were dubbed into, I think they were done in Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon. And they had taken these huge amounts of children's cartoons that were made in Japan, had them all dubbed in classical Arabic. And this was like part of the basic programming you would see on regular national TV, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. was children's cartoons. And they were all in classical Arabic. So even before you ever went to preschool, you were already exposed to the language. And never underestimate, I think, the power of simple exposure, just listening and getting used to the words. Whereas right now, because we select what we want to watch, unless it's a conscious decision to start playing cartoons in classical Arabic for your children from age 0, they're not exposed, and suddenly they're in kindergarten or first grade, and it's the first time they're learning this new language.
Right.
And it's much harder then, even though there's the neuroplasticity is still there and they can learn it. But again, technically, classical Arabic and whatever dialect you speak are almost like two different languages.
Yeah.
You know? So you're bringing up your child trilingual if you're speaking a third language at home, which is normally English, right? Most kids here, especially in the UAE, will go to school with an English curriculum. So it's not impossible. Many kids grow up trilingual. It's just a conscious choice.
You did the 3 books during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Back at work.
Illustrated them on my iPad.
Illustrate them on your iPad. Use the tools at hand.
Yeah.
More to come. And where this is leading is, this is a big part of your life. But you got this other part of your life too. How are you balancing them? How are you
Not
bringing
very
them?
well.
And I mean,
honesty.
this is my thing, right? And this is the dilemma. I'm hoping to get a hint from you. And I think so many of us have this challenge, is that we wear these multiple hats, and we almost have to take one off and put one on. How can we keep them going? How can we make them just part of what we do, so that we can flop in and out of them and keep doing them, as opposed to, okay, today I'm a writer. Tomorrow I'm back to doing my day job as a sustainability innovator. Now I'm going to go back to writing. It's that switch that I find so hard.
So for me, when I wrote and illustrated my books, I was actually on vacation.
Okay.
And I had blocked time.
You were in a different space. You blocked time.
Yeah, I had blocked time. I was every morning before. I was actually in the States at the time, so I'd wake up before anyone else did. I was at my mom's house. I'd wake up like at 8 a.m. normally or 7 a.m. Everybody else would wake up around 9, 10. And I just do the work at that time. Because for me, I'm a morning person.
Okay.
Which is why we're meeting right now. So I think I do my best clarity focus work without letting the world in or distracting me at that time. And that's when I was just the daily practice of doing that. So right now, I mean, I have a few ideas for other books in mind. I'm not sure I want to do them yet, just because, in full honesty, like, I'm still working on understanding the whole publishing and distribution world, and like marketing and things like that, which are not things that are really my strength, because it takes a lot of time and energy. And for me, I'd rather just delegate it.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of on the bench about, do I hire someone to do my marketing? Is it enough what I've been doing? How hard and big do I want to push this? Do I want to just let them, do their thing and create their own traction? Or am I neglecting them by not, trying to push them enough in a world where everybody's always using social media to constantly remind people that their products exist? It's
the challenge of the creative, and you've brought to life these products, and now you've got to put the business into them.
Yeah.
And again, it's a whole different hat.
Yeah. And my best answer to that is hire someone to do it.
Yeah. Hire someone who that's their hat.
Yeah. And consider it an investment into your future, into your products, if that is, where you want to go.
Yeah.
If you're like, no, I just did it for the sake of it existing, and, whatever happens is great, then that's also, but that needs to be a conscious choice.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm still kind of deciding, do I want to invest more into these, or am I going to let them, kind of exist and see what happens?
This way a little bit. Yeah, that's the challenge, isn't it? It's figuring out where to let go, where
what
to
your
hold
priorities
on,
are. Yeah.
And what you want to keep doing. And I think it's that middle ground that becomes the big challenge, because it gets frustrating, and you start questioning everything. And I think it gets in the way of doing that creative work.
Yeah, and honestly, I've hired a coach to help me with that too.
Okay.
So I meet with someone like every 2 weeks, and we sit and we talk about, like, what am I struggling with? What are my priorities? Like, try to get some clarity on what I'm unclear about. And I've used coaches on and off for the past, I don't know, and therapist, everything I can actually put my hands on for the past, at this point, like 15 years.
There's so many people who, when they would hear that, they go, oh no, you can't do it. What turned you on to the world of, hey, I need someone to help me process my ideas?
My parents.
There you go.
I started when I was like 23.
Why? What was the catalyst?
I was going through a really hard time.
If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah. It's not a secret, but I was going through a really hard time. There's a lot of like self-esteem issues. It was just like, and my parents could tell that I was struggling. I was, not going, I've always been a social person. I was not going out. I wasn't seeing people. And I think they tried to kind of reach out and talk to me, and they didn't really get anywhere. So there were also like some problems in my family as well at the time. So there was kind of like a family drama happening. And
so something else was the catalyst. It's something, part of your life, but not really related to all this, that sort of got you going, hey, something's got to give.
Yeah, and it wasn't even my idea. My parents, and we were in Saudi at the time, and my parents managed to find a really good therapist, not a psychiatrist who would prescribe pills, but actually somebody who would sit with me and help me kind of process my emotions, understand, why it was that I was feeling whatever it is that I was feeling at the time, and kind of give me some actionable steps as to how to get out of it. And that really helped. So that was kind of like 6 weeks of therapy, and I managed to, even from there, it's interesting because sometimes a lot of people, I think they don't give therapy or coaching or whatever a long enough chance.
Right.
Because you're not going to get results from the first session, right?
And I think that's what everyone thinks, I put some money in here, I need results. If it doesn't happen, 1-2 sessions, what's the point?
And even before I commit to like a new therapist or before I commit to like a new package, I'm always like, ooh, that's painful. I look at the prices and I'm like, and then I think back at like, I'm like, really, can I put a price on my mental and emotional health?
There you go.
Right? So then, I'm just like, you know what? And then what I do is I'm like, okay, so I'm going to be doing this for 6 months. And if I break over the price over, these 6 months per session, it seems a lot more manageable, So like basic economics, where I kind of, instead of just thinking of the lump sum up front. And a lot of companies right now, they actually cover a certain amount of therapy sessions per year. So why not take advantage of that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of people, I think they don't stick to it long enough. So therefore, and for me, even in that first instance where I did therapy, I would say I finished my 6 sessions without really any hard decisions or internal shift or actions that I was going to take, It was just kind of like, okay, 6 sessions done. How do you feel? I'm like, I have some things that I'm still thinking about, but I understand, I had a better understanding of the way my emotions were mapped out and why it was that I was feeling and why was it that I was struggling with things the way I was. And it took another 2-3 weeks for things to kind of simmer and percolate in my mind, and then something clicked into place. Right? So even
magic moment happened.
You
kind of gave in. I always say to my students in those situations, because some of what I teach involves them, they have to give up, in a sense, give in.
Yes.
And
surrender.
But they're fighting, and until they surrender and realize, hey, you know what? There's something there. Until that happens, it doesn't work.
Yeah, and I do that even when I'm trying to convince like a family member, my husband, of something, right? I plant the seed.
Yeah.
I make a suggestion and I walk away. I don't need you to change your mind right now, right?
Yeah.
Think about it. And it's a really good way to understand that a lot of times, especially if you're asking for something big, people need time to process things,
Yeah.
And we all do. It's normal. And people have different timelines of how they need to process things. So if it takes them a while to kind of come around, and maybe it's never, who cares? But still, and again, it goes back to this whole idea of resistance and surrender. How willing are we to surrender to change, to that shift. And for me, like, it was this very quiet shift. It wasn't like a big aha moment. It's just like suddenly I felt differently. You know, one day I woke up.
You can't put words on it. You just feel just.
One day I woke up and I felt differently, and it felt great. You know, and I knew I was like, like something, I don't know, fermented, sprouted. I don't know what kind of process happened. You know, and it was really amazing. But you know, interestingly enough, when you bring up the topic of surrender, the first thing that came to mind is that literally that is the definition of the word Islam, right?
Ah, that's right.
It's surrender. So do you like it's all about maybe, you know, not using resistance or whatever it is that you want to call it, but like surrendering to a greater power, surrendering to, you know, the process, whatever it is. And it kind of, that's what it reminded me of, is that when you said, you know, you need to surrender to a concept or to an idea or to change, it's kind of like accepting things and realizing that, you know, this is how it is and this is how you work with it, and that's fine.
Do you think this coaching and these conversations you've been having over the last 15 years have really helped you manage your life and career changes and the career trajectory you've gone on, which...
Definitely.
Yeah,
no questions. Definitely. And I'm also really lucky because my husband's really good also at, you know, giving me advice and mentoring me in other areas as well. So like he's really good. His strength is really with, you know, negotiation and understanding people and all that stuff. So whenever I'm up for a tough negotiation, I'm just like, okay, listen, what's the game plan? You know?
Do you think that's part of our challenge we face in you know, post-pandemic, but even just modernizing society, is we don't talk enough and we don't ask for enough help from people? We you know, in a sense, scared, whether we articulate it or not, scared that by asking for this help, by demonstrating that there are areas that we have weaknesses, that we're exposing a vulnerability that might be weaponized against us. Do you think that's part in our minds? I put a lot in there.
I don't think it's pandemic related. I think maybe the stress that a lot of people went through during the pandemic has uncovered previous habits and maybe limiting beliefs that have existed before, but we're covering up pretty well. I think maybe we've kind of reached a time right now where it's harder to, you know, put up the corporate face, and also there's been a lot of changes even in the way corporate culture is right now, and vulnerability is a lot more accepted. But I think if you were raised with a certain mentality, right? If you're raised not to show weakness, especially for men, by the way, I'm so glad I'm not a man. No offense or anything, right? But when historically, when you look at the culture of how men were raised, honestly, like it was really unfair to not be able to voice your vulnerabilities, your fears. You know, there's a lot of like posturing going on, and it's just... It's something I'm so glad I don't have to go through. You know, that being said, some women feel like they need to compete it that way in the workforce.
Yeah. I see that a lot.
Yeah.
I see that a lot.
Yeah. And sometimes you need to be assertive, but there's a difference between being assertive in your feminine power.
Right. Yeah.
Versus trying to be assertive in a masculine power that maybe doesn't suit you or harms you in the long run, you know, because whatever energies we decide to adapt, whatever personas we decide to take on, practice it long enough, neuroplasticity becomes part of you.
Okay.
Right? So fake it till you make it is not is not really untrue, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, if I'm going to be taking on a certain behavior at work that is maybe against my nature, yes, sometimes I need to learn how to be more assertive or stand up for myself or set my boundaries, but I don't have to do it in a way that crosses into other people's boundaries, right? I don't have to do it in a way that hurts them. I can be very simply say, no, that doesn't work for me, you know? without telling somebody, oh, you're this or you're that, or, no, there's no need. So I think it really depends on the culture that you've been brought up in, and that's why I think that coaching or therapy, it doesn't make sense to go only for professional coaching. It's related to who you are as a human being.
Because you can't separate the two.
You can't. Yeah. You can't. And by the way, you will see the same struggles you deal with at work probably are mirrored in your personal life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's more about what kind of skill do you need to learn, because these are the opportunities that are coming up that are trying to force you to learn them.
Right. Interesting. There's a big elephant in the room today. If you're watching the news, if you're doing anything on a computer.
Okay.
2 letters, AI.
I saw that coming.
Where's this fit in your world?
Oh, I love it. Look, I understand that with any change comes fear, right?
Yeah.
Because it's fear of the unknown. Question is...
I know, but I just want to preface this again. You love it. That's what you said. You love it. Innovator, sustainable thinker, designer, writer, author, publisher. You love AI.
Yeah, I mean, I love the potential, the good potential, right?
That's what everyone's saying. There's good and there's but that's the world, right?
It's humans.
Yeah, anyone can use anything negatively.
Yeah. and I recognize that there needs to be proper, let's say, precautions to accommodate for human beings. The problem is not AI.
Yeah.
AI is not going to decide of its own to take over the world, okay? Somebody's going to come out and is going to say, hey, AI, how do we take over the world, right? And that's going to be that's going to be the issuing order, so to speak. So
it's us getting it straight.
Yeah.
What do you like about it? What's exciting you about AI opportunities from what you're seeing and what you're using?
Well, let's say from a text-to-image perspective, from an artistic perspective, if you see just what people were saying a few years ago about when Photoshop came out, is digital art really art?
Right.
Do you have to be a painter? And pretty quickly we've accepted digital art as a genre of painting. And I think AI art is, a genre of art. And I think AI art is also going to be a genre of art. It doesn't mean that painters are not going to be appreciated. It doesn't mean that digital artists are not going to be appreciated. It just means that the people who come up with the words, I think what it is right now is that wordsmiths can become artists, right? And they can put...
Yeah, if you can write the right prompt, you can make Midjourney do amazing things.
Exactly. And it's all about if you can write the right prompt.
Yeah.
So again, there is still a creator that is not AI in this area.
Well, look, I have a photographer friend who uses Midjourney and AI.
I know him too.
And The Faces of the Unknown.
Beautiful.
Richard Cawood.
Yeah, I show his work to everyone I know. I'm just like, can you believe this is not a real person?
So there's 2 pieces of secret sauce in what he does. One piece of secret sauce is every one of those images he does throw into Photoshop and just maybe play with the backgrounds or do things. And over the last 6 months, he just sits there and he's like, wow, can you believe? But the prompts that he's using to create those...
Only a professional photographer would know how to use.
I mean, we're talking down to the lens type, the film he wants it on, f-stops. If you're not the artist, you can't make it do that. And I think that, to me,
just painting with words.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah. And that's why, like, for me... So we have the text to image, right? We have that on the side, and then we're looking into the bigger AI right now, things like ChatGPT. I know for academia it's a big problem, right? Because some places have embraced it and some have fully rejected it as, a plagiarism method.
The problem for academia is we're too tied to the old way, and I think academics
should be the opposite.
Oh, I think they're scared because it means they're going to have to change the way they assess and teach. For me, I kind of see it taking education back to where it's supposed to be, having a conversation, talking through ideas.
Yeah.
And I think it's phenomenal. I'm really, really, and like at the end of the day, the amount of AI tools that have existed in what we do anyway, whether it be Grammarly or Google's predictive, it's always been there anyway.
For ages.
It just hasn't been so adept at writing stuff, but so it means we have to change. And that's the problem with academia, and that's the world we're going to.
Yeah, but here's the thing. There's I think he was an economist some point in history. I'm really bad with retaining that type of information, but basically he made this hypothesis, and he thought that at this time, I think it was at the turn of like the Industrial Revolution, if I'm not wrong, but he basically hypothesized that in the future, at around our time, right?
Yeah.
He imagined that people would be pretty much working a lot less, because everything's been automated, and would be generating money off, I guess, the bots that they own, so to speak, or universal income or some other method. But basically that you could work a lot less hours in a week because there isn't that much to be done anymore.
Right.
And then when they kind of revisited his work in more recent times, they realized that there was a huge growth in middle management that didn't exist before. So we've basically just created all these layers of managers, managing people, managing people, managing other people in order to create jobs.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think there needs to be, while there's value in what everyone does, realistically speaking, people don't work more than 4 or 5 hours a day, right?
Exactly.
Now that I'm wearing 2 hats, I'm actually working a full 8 hours a day. It's driving me nuts, but okay, in theory, the 4-day work week should be an easy thing to do. It should be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And back to what you were saying about the fear of showing vulnerability, or even the fear of saying you need help, there's also a fear of saying we don't need to be working 5 days a week.
Yeah. Well,
or in some cultures 6-7 days a week.
The whole system's built on it.
Yeah.
It's predicated on it.
Yes. But then the system needs to be rethought.
Yeah.
It needs to be redesigned. And why not? Why shouldn't people be able to take more leisure time and enjoy their life and maybe retire later because, hey, they're enjoying their lives and their careers, and therefore they can work longer, But my per hour productivity, especially with tools like AI now, is going to skyrocket.
Yeah. Well,
so then why should I create more work to squeeze into those hours?
Even just what I'm doing, the quality of descriptions, the quality of things I'm generating from this content, I didn't do.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
And now I'm doing it because AI is here is streamlining it for me, making it possible. And the irony is, because of the AI assistance, I'm actually doing more.
Exactly.
It's like, I'm not doing less. My wife said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm just assembling." And she's going, "You're putting more time into this than you used to put in."
And this is what the research is showing.
Yeah. But the quality's way better. I'm just going, I've augmented my quality through a little help. I've got an intern working for me now.
Yeah.
And it's called ChatGPT.
Exactly. We've even used it to create or to find the perfect banana bread recipe.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, if you don't understand baking and you don't understand some of the basic things, you could get led astray. So you still have to understand. You have to have common sense.
Yeah, definitely. And you need to edit with it, what you get, the content they get. I've used it at work. And I've kind of used it to kind of give me the bones of something,
right?
Yeah. And then I'll edit and kind of add in the meat, So instead of
great at that.
Yeah, it's very good at that. Let's look at the structure. What's the best structure for X, Y, Z? Okay, I got that. And now I already have the information and the content. I'm just dumping it in there.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, it saved you an hour of your life, and it saves you. As my one son says, who works in the music industry, it saves you the BS work.
Exactly. The grunt work.
Yeah, the grunt work. It's just
the thing nobody wants to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh man.
So that's why I love it, right? Yeah. But again, I recognize there are people out there who might want to, I don't know, do something highly illegal or highly unethical.
Yeah.
And like anything on the planet, and it goes even to if you go back to basic internet, right?
Yeah.
You have dark web.
Yeah, it's all there.
And you have all kinds of illegal things happening, horrible things happening there. And
even on the green web, there's so much terrible stuff on there.
Yeah. So it's really about, again, it's a tool, and it is modified depending on who's holding it. Now, it's a very powerful tool. Okay.
Yes.
Is it like putting nuclear codes in the hands of everyone? I don't know. But that's something that I'm hoping they're mitigating for.
Yeah, I think at the heart of it, I think people are good.
Yeah.
And even the people who aren't so good, they just got off their path, but they can be brought back. Yeah,
Yes.
I think you're right.
Yes.
And I think you have to live like that, or else you become suspicious and cynical. And I know some people like that. I don't want to be down that path. No. This has been fun.
Yes, it
It's
has.
really been fun.
It has been. I'm glad we're doing this.
And man, we talked about a lot of stuff.
Yes.
We went all over the map. This is what you call a walk and talk.
I know.
Oh man, I really enjoyed this. Thank you very much.
Me too. Thank you.
And we'll do it again.
Definitely. Even without mics.
You've been listening to the Catching Up podcast with me, James Piecowye, and Maha AlKhalawi.